They found his teeth before they found his name. The desert wind howled through the night, carrying the metallic tang of blood. Ethan Cross crouched behind a rusted pickup, his pulse hammering as headlights cut through the dust. A voice crackled over a radio in Spanish, cold and sharp. Isabella Vega stepped from the shadows, her stilettos sinking slightly into the sand. She said, "You're late, Ethan." He knew better than to answer. Behind her, Rafael Torres dragged a bloodied man by the collar, his boots leaving a dark trail in the dirt. "The deal's changed," Rafael growled. Ethan's gut clenched. He hadn't agreed to this. A gun clicked, loud in the silence, and a scream tore through the night. The scream wasn't the man's. It was Ethan's memory of his brother, years ago, on the other end of a phone call. The headlights grew brighter. The desert became a cage. Ethan whispered, "This isn't my fight." Isabella smiled, a predator's smile. "It is now." The desert swallowed sound, leaving only the hiss of wind. Ethan's mind raced as he watched Isabella circle the captive like a vulture. She said, "You know what happens if you lie to me." The man's eyes darted toward Ethan, pleading. He wanted to look away, but Raphael's grip on his shoulder anchored him in place. "You were supposed to bring the truck," Raphael said, voice low and venomous. Ethan forced his tone calm. "The truck's gone." Silence fell heavy, broken by the distant growl of engines. Dust clouds on the horizon moved closer. Uninvited guests. Ethan's stomach turned. The cartel didn't share the desert with anyone. Isabella's gaze sharpened. "Then tonight changes," she whispered. The engines grew louder, headlights swelling against the night. Ethan felt the weight of 1,000 bad choices pressing on him. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote cried. It sounded almost human. Engines roared closer, and the air thickened with dust. Ethan's heartbeat matched the hum of approaching tires. Isabella didn't move, her eyes locked on the darkness ahead. Raphael muttered, "Not our people." That single phrase chilled Ethan more than the desert cold. He said, "We should move." Isabella's lips curved slightly, but her eyes stayed on the lights. "We don't run," she replied. The headlights split into 3 beams, 3 vehicles cresting a low ridge. Shapes in the glare moved like predators. The captive whimpered, and Raphael's grip tightened. Ethan shifted his stance, scanning for cover. The metallic click of a rifle being readied sliced through the wind. Every instinct screamed at him to vanish into the night, but something told him that running would only get him killed faster. The first truck skidded to a stop, throwing up a wall of dust. Figures spilled out, rifles raised, faces masked. Ethan's throat tightened. Isabella stepped forward, heels sinking into the dirt, unbothered. "This is Vega ground," she called. A masked man replied in Spanish, mocking. Raphael bristled, his hand hovering near his pistol. Ethan said quietly, "You're going to get us all killed." She ignored him. The standoff held for a long moment, the desert itself holding its breath. A sudden gust whipped dust across their faces, stinging eyes and skin. Somewhere in the haze, a safety clicked off. Ethan's body tensed. Violence was seconds away. The masked man stepped forward, lowering his rifle just enough to show his face. Ethan's stomach dropped. It was Marco Ruiz, a name whispered in border towns like a curse. Marco smiled without warmth. "Ethan Cross," he said in accented English. "I thought you were dead." Ethan's voice was gravel. "Not yet." Isabella's eyes darted between them, calculating. Marco's gaze lingered on her. "The Vega princess keeping strange company," he mused. Raphael shifted, his hand tightening on his weapon. Marco's men fanned out, surrounding them in a loose circle. The desert wind roared again, carrying the scent of gasoline and something darker, gunpowder. Dust swallowed the moon as engines cooled and tempers rose. Marco Ruiz paced the semicircle like a ringmaster counting knives. "Tight." Ethan Cross felt the ground tilt under the weight of old sins. Isabella Vega stood still, eyes sharp as glass. Rafael Torres watched the perimeters, breath shallow and ready. Marco said, "You cost me a convoy in Juarez." Ethan said, "You did that yourself." Laughter thinned the night like a wire. Isabella said, "We negotiate, or we bleed." Marco tilted his head, amused and hungry. He snapped his fingers, and a duffel dropped at Ethan's boots. Inside were teeth, rings, and a phone that still vibrated. Ethan's gut turned to salt. Raphael said, "He's sending a message." The phone flashed a grainy photo of a warehouse near the levee. Marco said, "Bring what you owe, or I take what you are." Isabella didn't blink. She said, "We'll take the warehouse." Ethan whispered, "This will burn." The desert answered with wind that tasted like rust. They hit the levee road before dawn, tires whispering on cracked asphalt. The river moved like a black vein beside them. Ethan cross-gripped the wheel and counted exit wounds in his head. Isabella Vega studied maps, lit by a dying dashboard bulb. Rafael Torres watched the rear window with the soldier's haunted patience. Ethan said, "No backup." Isabella said, "No witnesses." The warehouse squatted ahead like a bruise on concrete. Rafael unzipped a kit and checked the rifle by touch. He said, "If it goes loud, we go through." Ethan felt the old fear return, familiar and unwelcome. Isabella's phone buzzed with an encrypted ping. She said, "Border patrol chatter is heavy." A helicopter thumped far off, a steel bird smelling blood. Ethan said, "Clock's running." The sky paled to dead blue, and the river answered with cold breath. Somewhere behind them, the night closed its fist. The warehouse breathed mold and motor oil. Ethan cross-pried the side door with a crowbar that remembered other doors. Rafael Torres swept corners, muzzle leading his shadow. Isabella Vega moved like a rumor between pillars. A generator coughed awake and died. Ethan whispered, "Too quiet." A phone trilled from a crate, and then stopped. Rafael said, "Tripwire." He traced a line of fishing cord to a black can taped to a beam. Isabella said, "Not his style." Ethan found a message stenciled on the floor in pink chalk. It read, "Pay the river." He tasted old river water and a memory of drowning. A door slammed far off and echoed like a gunshot. Rafael said, "We're not alone." Isabella answered with a steady breath. She said, "Then we end this fast." The chalk dust smeared under Ethan's boot like a signature he could not unsign. They found the real message in the office upstairs. A corkboard stitched with twine and photos of faces missing eyes. Ethan Cross saw his brother in the corner, half burned, half smiling. He did not blink. Isabella Vega said, "This is theater." Rafael Torres peeled back a photo to reveal coordinates scrawled in grease pencil. He said, "Canal Lock 23. A scanner on the desk burst to life with radio traffic. Border Patrol called a sweep on the levee sector. Ethan said, "He's hurting us." Isabella's gaze sharpened. She said, "Then we cut across." Shots cracked outside, and glass rained inward like cold hail. Raphael threw Ethan down as a bullet skated the desk. He said, "Masks, south wall." Ethan's heart staggered and caught its footing. Isabella said, "We move now." The corkboard twine trembled like spider silk in a storm. They ran the stairwell as bullets stitched the drywall. Rafael Torres shouldered the exit door and took the first step into the morning. Smoke from the river plants rolled across the lot. Ethan Cross felt the sun crawl over the horizon like a slow torch. Isabella Vega said, "Car, now." A masked shooter rose behind a forklift and failed to finish his prayer. Raphael's shots were merciless and clean. Sirens wailed somewhere between river and road. Ethan said, "Canal Lock 23, or we die here." Isabella's pupils narrowed to razors. She said, "We keep the timeline." Tires screamed as they hit the asphalt and fed the engine fear. A drone hummed above them and blinked red like a patient eye. Raphael said, "We're marked." Ethan answered the only way he knew, He pressed harder, and the levee unspooled like a fuse toward the lock. The canal lock crouched in the fog like a waiting animal. Ethan Cross slowed the car, eyes scanning for silhouettes. Rafael Torres said, "2 on the gate, maybe more in the shadows." Isabella Vega's voice was calm. "He's already here." A gull screamed overhead, and the echo shivered down the water. Ethan stepped out, boots sinking in damp gravel, the air tasting of rust and algae. A shape emerged from the mist. Marco Ruiz, hands empty but smile loaded. He said, "You brought friends." Ethan said, "We brought the truth." Marco chuckled, stepping aside to reveal a chained figure, Ethan's brother, gaunt and shivering. The shock crushed Ethan's breath. Raphael muttered, "This wasn't in the deal." Isabella's gaze narrowed. It was never about the money. The lock gates groaned as if they sensed blood coming. Ethan took one step forward, every muscle screaming. Marco's eyes gleamed. "Now it's about you." Ethan Cross took a step toward his brother, but Marco Ruiz raised a finger like a priest, calling silence. "One move, and the river takes him," Marco said. Rafael Torres shifted his weight, calculating angles. Isabella Vega's voice was flat. "You're bluffing." Marco laughed softly, pulling a small device from his coat. Ethan recognized the detonator shape instantly, something wired under the lock's platform. His brother's eyes widened, lips moving in a silent plea. Ethan's hands curled into fists. Raphael said, "We cut the power." Isabella countered, "We cut the head." The mist thickened, swallowing the edges of the dock. Somewhere beneath the water, machinery churned like an unseen heart. Ethan's pulse matched it, heavy and inevitable. Marco tilted his head, waiting to see who would flinch first. A splash cracked the silence, one of Marco's men disappearing into the water with barely a ripple. Rafael Torres had fired before anyone breathed. Chaos erupted. Ethan Cross lunged for his brother as Isabella Vega moved in a blur toward Marco. The detonator clattered on the wet dock. Marco twisted away, striking her shoulder with brutal precision. Ethan's arms wrapped his brother, the bones sharp under the skin. "Hold on," Ethan muttered. Gunfire stuttered through the fog, muzzle flashes painting brief, violent constellations. Raphael barked, "Go!" A bullet split a plank inches from Ethan's knee. The lock machinery groaned louder, water sloshing against rusted gates. Somewhere in the chaos, Marco vanished into the mist, leaving his men to bleed for him. They pulled back to the levee road, Ethan Cross brother shivering under Raphael's jacket. Isabella Vega pressed a hand to her shoulder, blood seeping between her fingers. "He's gone," she said. Ethan stared at the horizon, searching the fog for Marco's ghost. Rafael Torres scanned their flank. "This was staged," he muttered. Ethan asked, "By who?" Isabella's gaze was iron. "Not Marco. He's somebody's blade, not the hand." The wind shifted, carrying the distant wail of sirens. Ethan's brother coughed, voice barely a whisper. They sold you out." Ethan froze, the words like frost in his veins. He asked, "Who?" But the answer came in a look, not a name. Isabella's eyes, steady and unreadable. In the safe house, the walls sweated with heat from overworked generators. Rafael Torres paced like a caged wolf. Ethan Cross brother slept fitfully on a cot, muttering in broken Spanish. Isabella Vega sat at a metal table, turning a burner phone in her hands. "The call that brought Marco," she said, "came from inside our circle." Ethan felt something tear loose inside him. Raphael stopped pacing. "Name them," he said. Isabella's expression didn't change. "You won't like it." Ethan leaned forward, shadows cutting his face into sharp lines. "Say it." Isabella's voice was calm as the river at dawn. "It was your wife, Ethan." The silence after was heavier than gunfire. The safe house door slammed like a verdict. Ethan Cross stood over the table, knuckles white on the metal edge. "You're sure?" he asked. Isabella Vega's voice didn't waver. "Your wife made the call." Rafael Torres' eyes shifted between them, gauging the fracture. Ethan's brother stirred on the cot, muttering names lost in fever. "We find her," Ethan said. "We find the truth." Rafael leaned in, voice low. "Or we find a grave." The generator coughed, plunging the room into shadow before sputtering back to life. Outside, rain began to tap the corrugated roof, each drop a countdown. Isabella slid a photo across the table. Ethan's wife at a border cafe with Marco Ruiz. His stomach turned cold steel. "Then we start there," he said. In the silence that followed, even the rain held its breath. The cafe smelled of burnt coffee and cheap perfume. Ethan Cross entered first, scanning for exits. Isabella Vega followed, her black coat dripping from the rain. Rafael Torres stayed near the door, hand under his jacket. The waitress eyed them warily. In the corner, Ethan's wife sat alone, no Marco tot. Her gaze flicked up, freezing on Ethan. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low. She sipped her coffee, pretending the cup didn't tremble. "You don't understand," she whispered. Isabella leaned in. "Make us." A shadow passed outside the window. Rafael stiffened. Ethan's wife's eyes widened. "They're here." Tires screeched on wet pavement. Ethan grabbed her arm. "Move." The cafe lights flickered as the first shot shattered the front glass. Gunfire carved the cafe into splinters. Rafael Torres shoved tables into a barricade. Isabella Vega drew first, firing through the broken window. Ethan Cross dragged his wife toward the kitchen. "Who sent them?" he shouted. "Marco," she gasped, "and someone higher." Pots crashed as they hit the back door. Outside, an alley slick with rain glistened under a flickering sign. A black SUV skidded to block the exit. Rafael burst through behind them, rifle up. "On me!" The SUV door opened, and a man in a gray suit stepped out, calm in the storm. His voice carried through the rain. "Ethan Cross, I've been waiting." The man's smile was surgical. The gray-suited man's eyes never left Ethan Cross. "You think Marco runs the border?" he said. "He runs errands." Rafael Torres kept his sights locked, but the man didn't flinch. Isabella Vega stepped forward, water running down her cheek. "Then who runs you?" His smile widened. "The same man who owns your bloodlines." A van screeched into the alley mouth. Reinforcements. Gunfire sparked against the walls. Ethan shoved his wife toward Rafael. "Get her out." Isabella drew a blade from her coat, eyes fixed on the suit. He stepped back into the SUV, door slamming as tires shrieked away. Rain hissed on empty asphalt, the questions heavier than the bullets. Back at the safe house, the map lay open like a wound. Isabella Vega traced a line from the canal lock to a ranch near the border fence. "That's where the hand hides," she said. Rafael Torres loaded fresh magazines. Ethan Cross stood apart, watching rain slide down the window. His wife sat silent, hands cuffed, mascara bleeding. "He'll expect you," Rafael said. Ethan answered, "Then we give him more than he expects." Isabella's eyes held his. "No mercy." Ethan nodded. "No survivors." Outside, the storm broke into a cold, hard wind. Inside, the air thickened with intent. Tonight, they would cross the line. The ranch lay under a bruised sky, its fence crowned with barbed wire slick from the rain. Ethan Cross crouched beside the truck, checking the last round in his pistol. Rafael Torres scanned the perimeter, voice low. 2 guards by the east barn, more near the main house. Isabella Vega adjusted her coat, the handle of her blade glinting. "We start with the barn," she said. A dog barked once and was silenced. Ethan thought of his brother's hollow eyes, of the detonator, of the call from his wife. His jaw locked. "No survivors." Rafael nodded. The wind carried the smell of manure and diesel, a strange mix of life and war. Isabella's gaze lingered on Ethan. You burn this place, you burn your way home. He didn't answer. The night was already burning inside him. They breached the east barn in silence. Rafael Torres slit the lock. Ethan Cross kicked the door inward. The smell of hay and blood hit like a fist. Inside, 2 guards played cards at a makeshift table. Isabella Vega's blade found the first man's throat before he could stand. Ethan's pistol barked once, dropping the second. A horse shifted in the shadows, eyes wide and white. Rafael said, "Move!" They stepped over the bodies, boots sinking into sawdust gone dark with fresh stains. From outside came the cough of an engine and the crunch of tires on gravel. Isabella whispered, "Main house just woke up." Ethan checked the magazine. "Half left," he said. "Then we don't let them sleep again." They cut across the muddy yard toward the main house. Floodlights snapped on, bleaching the world in harsh white. Gunfire tore through the dark, splintering the water trough beside Ethan Cross. Rafael Torres returned fire, dropping a figure from the roof. Isabella Vega moved low and fast, vaulting a stone planter to reach the porch. Ethan followed, mud sucking at his boots. The door blew open from the inside, a shotgun blast shredding the air. He hit the wall, breath gone. Rafael tossed a flashbang through the gap. Whoa! The explosion bloomed white heat and ringing silence. Ethan surged inside before the light died, pistol tracking for the next shadow. The main hall smelled of wood, polish, and cordite. Bodies lay scattered in the wake of the flashbang. Isabella Vega stepped over one, blade still wet. A figure staggered at the far end. Marco Ruiz, bleeding from his temple but smiling. "I told you," he rasped. "It was never about money." Ethan Cross aimed, but Marco raised a trembling hand. "He's upstairs." Rafael Torres moved toward the staircase. Marco laughed, the sound raw. "You think you'll make it?" Ethan fired once. Marco fell back, still smiling. The sound of slow footsteps above drew their eyes upward. Isabella whispered, "The hand." He came down the stairs in a funeral black suit, tall and thin, face unreadable. Ethan Cross knew without hearing. This was the man behind it all. "You cost me blood," the man said, voice like frost on glass. "And you cost me everything," Ethan replied. Rafael Torres leveled his rifle. But the man didn't stop. Isabella Vega's fingers tightened on her blade. "Do it," she said. The man smiled faintly, as if the choice amused him. Ethan pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the hall, rolling into silence. The man crumpled on the last step, a dark bloom spreading across his chest. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the smell of wet earth and gunpowder. Ethan holstered his pistol, but the weight in his chest didn't lift. The ranch burned behind them, flames snapping in the cold night wind. Ethan Cross stood in the dirt drive, the heat against his back and the rain still on his face. Rafael Torres tossed the last empty mag into the mud. "It's done," he said, though his eyes said otherwise. Isabella Vega walked past, her coat streaked with blood and ash. "It's never done," she murmured. Ethan looked toward the dark horizon, where the fence cut the desert in two. His wife was gone, slipped away in the chaos. He didn't chase. The firelight painted the puddles copper and gold, like coins scattered in the dirt. Somewhere inside the roaring blaze, the past crumbled into blackened fragments. Ethan whispered, "Nothing left to take." They reached the safe house at dawn, silence filling the truck like smoke. Ethan Cross sat behind the wheel, eyes bloodshot from more than sleeplessness. Rafael Torres cradled his rifle as if it might answer questions. Isabella Vega lit a cigarette, exhaling through the cracked window. "Bodies will be found," Rafael said. Isabella replied, "Let them." Ethan pulled into the gravel lot, the buildings peeling paint, catching the pale morning light. His brother lay inside, still weak but breathing. Ethan stood over him, brushing damp hair from his forehead. "It's over," he said, knowing it was a lie. Outside, the first border patrol trucks moved along the levee, engines low, watching but not stopping. Inside the safe house, the air was thick with the hum of the generator and the smell of stale coffee. Ethan Cross' brother sat propped up on the cot, eyes clearer now. "You saved me," he said. Ethan shook his head. "I tried." Rafael Torres leaned against the wall, silent. Isabella Vega spread maps across the table, marking routes with a red pen. "The vacuum won't last," she said. "Someone will take the border." Ethan's brother coughed, wincing. "Then, stop them." Ethan's gaze dropped to the map, the red lines like veins leading back to the same rotten heart. "I'm done," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. Outside, the wind rattled the tin roof like an impatient hand. The rain had stopped by mid-morning, leaving the desert raw and exposed. Ethan Cross stood outside, watching steam rise from the wet earth. Rafael Torres joined him, passing a flask. "We could disappear," Rafael said. Ethan took a slow drink, the burn cutting through the cold. "And leave it all for someone worse?" he asked. Isabella Vega appeared in the doorway, her hair loose, eyes unreadable. "They'll come for us before week's end," she said. Ethan looked at her, seeing both ally and warning. "Then, we keep moving." In the distance, a black truck crested a ridge and paused, watching them before reversing out of sight. The game wasn't over. It had only changed hands. That night, the safe house felt smaller, the walls closer. Ethan Cross sat at the table, cleaning his pistol by lamplight. Rafael Torres sorted ammunition with mechanical precision. Isabella Vega stood at the window, watching the darkness beyond. "You ever think about stopping?" Rafael asked. Ethan didn't look up. "I think about what happens if I do." Isabella glanced over her shoulder, cigarette ember glowing. "Ghosts don't get to stop." Ethan slid the cleaned barrel into place and chambered a round. "Then we keep moving," he said. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the glass. It sounded like distant footsteps, but no one went to check. The morning after, the desert felt hollow, as if the night had taken more than lives. Ethan Cross walked alone toward the levee, the pale sun barely warming his back. Rafael Torres stood by the truck, watching him but not following. Isabella Vega smoked in silence, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Ethan reached the water's edge, staring at the slow current. It carried silt, scraps of wood, and something darker. He thought of Marco, the man in the suit, his wife, and the bodies they'd left behind. His reflection in the water looked older, a man carved from violence. He whispered to no one, "There's no going back." The wind stirred the reeds, carrying away his words like they were never his to keep. Inside the safe house, Ethan Cross' brother sat up on the cot for the first time in days. "It's over?" he asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. Rafael Torres cleaned his rifle, the repetitive motion like a metronome for silence. Isabella Vega folded the maps, one by one, until the table was bare. "It's never over," she said softly. Ethan sat beside his brother, taking his hand for a moment. The bones felt stronger now, but the eyes still held the river's cold. "We'll leave soon," Ethan said, though his voice lacked conviction. Outside, a hawk circled high above the desert, patient and watchful, waiting for something to die. They drove south at dusk, the horizon bleeding orange into purple. Ethan Cross took the wheel, hands steady but eyes far away. Rafael Torres rode shotgun, scanning the road ahead. Isabella Vega sat in back, silent, her gaze on the fading sky. The truck rattled over cracked asphalt, past ghost towns and shuttered gas stations. They spoke little, each lost in their own ledger of debts unpaid. A sign flashed past, 20 miles to the border. "Once we cross," Rafael said, "we disappear." Ethan tightened his grip on the wheel. Disappear into what? No one answered. The last light drained from the sky, leaving them in the color of gunmetal. They reached the border fence, under a moonless sky. Floodlights swept the crossing, catching dust in pale cones. Ethan Cross pulled the truck into shadow. Rafael Torres checked his watch. 2 minutes between sweeps. Isabella Vega stepped out, her boots silent on the dirt. Once we cross, she said, we don't come back. Ethan looked at the steel and wire, the line that had cost them so much. He thought of the people buried on both sides, of the deals that still traded in blood. We're already ghosts, he said. The light swung away, and they moved forward. The night swallowed them whole. Days later, in a nameless border town, Ethan Cross sat alone at a cafe table, coffee cooling in front of him. Rafael Torres was gone, vanished into whatever life came next. Isabella Vega's chair sat empty, her cigarette pack left behind. The street outside was quiet, except for the low hum of distant engines. Ethan watched the steam fade from his cup, feeling the silence settle in his bones. The waitress asked if he needed anything else. He shook his head. No, he said. I've got everything I came for. But his eyes betrayed the truth, there was nothing left. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered, there's no retirement plan for ghosts.